org. That is Main Street Media, Utah. And I'm so happy to have you join us today. This is the Liberty Mom Show, and Liberty Moms are the original Secretaries of Defense. We are the real defenders of the home front, and we are there when it comes to defending our families and our communities. And I am your host, Dalane England. I am super excited to have a Liberty Mom and a Liberty Dad with us today. We have governor candidate, but also one to be the governor's race, but candidate Phil Lyman, and also Lieutenant Governor candidate Natalie Clawson. We're very pleased to have you with us today. And I know that there's a lot in the news, and we want to give everyone an opportunity to know really what is going on, to understand the situation and the circumstances. So we're going to start by, I want to just introduce a little bit, Phil, so people kind of know a little bit about you and who you are. You have a CPA firm, and you're a current sitting legislator. You're a father of 5, which is the most important. Do you have any grandchildren? You do, don't you? You have grandkids.
17 and a half. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Exciting. And so the reason that you ran to be a legislator is because of your...
Well, I was a county commissioner before that. And the reason I ran for that was because of the collusion that I was witnessing going on between agencies that are supposed to set good policy, and instead they were, serving their friends or whomever.
Yeah, and you wanted to have a place for your children and grandchildren to grow up, and you saw the corruption, you saw what was happening locally, and and you really were lobbied, like you were requested to run for the legislature, and you've been in the legislature. And I, as a witness, I will say you have done an amazing job. I feel like you have really done an excellent job as a legislator. And then Natalie, she is an attorney. She has 5 children as well. And she is a lieutenant governor pick. And she has a history, again, of standing for freedom, standing for liberty, and just not with your hair on fire, just like we need to stand up and we need to defend our constitutional principles. And that's what I'm all about. I love our Constitution. It's incredible. And we have to stand up for those principles, or we will lose our freedom, which we have seen happen. And so we have this amazing system. It's quite awesome. And I especially love our system in Utah, where we have the caucus convention system. And so you went to the caucus convention system. You had the delegates, as we do in Utah. They go to the caucus, they get elected, and then they vet the candidates. And it's a great system because the real life people that are represented, elected representatives, had a chance to be elected. And then they went and spent weeks interviewing you, talking to you, and all the other candidates, all of them, everyone running, have a chance to get to vet and talk to and ask the hard questions of each one. And then what happened at convention with you, Phil?
Well, I mean, convention was amazing, and we got almost 68% to Spencer's 32%. So we won the convention. If you get above 60%, the bylaws of the party say you go straight to the general ballot. So to force a primary, somebody has to get above 40%. And it's the first time in Utah's history that an incumbent governor failed to qualify for a primary at convention. So then the argument kind of was, well, did we have to do a primary when we didn't select this? Can his actions of following the signature route force us into a primary? And I mean, it was a very short discussion because it's the lieutenant governor who's making that call.
Which I think is important for everyone to know, that the lieutenant governor, the job of a lieutenant governor in the state of Utah, they only have one responsibility, and that responsibility is over elections.
Yeah.
So there's a couple.
I mean, they have other responsibilities, but that is
their number
primary
one.
And they're on the same ticket with the governor. It's not a separate office. They're elected with the governor. So in essence, the governor's over his own elections. At least that office is. And so for them to say, well, we make the rules and you have to do a primary, then that's when the discussion came up about and in the debate, will you accept the results of the elections? And I said, we'll verify the results of the elections, whether we win or lose. And that kind of set the stage. Hopefully that I mean, and I wasn't being clever about that. That was a genuine, sincere answer. Is I'm not going to say I'm going to accept the results of the election. I didn't trust the system previously. I found lots of errors with it. I've been running election bills for several years. That's how Natalie and I became acquainted. So, election integrity is not like an afterthought for us. It was like central. Honestly, it's central to the reason we're running for the office, is to expose some of the weaknesses in all of that collusion, plus the elections and that whole system. I call it a syndicate of just maintaining their power.
Yeah, because
But
that's
we
a
did
very
win.
good point. You ran quite a number of election bills before you even thought about running for governor. So you were already concerned about our elections, as well as I am. Okay, so so after you won at convention because of a bill passed 12 years ago, I believe, SB 54, that says that you no longer have to go face the people. You no longer have to address people. You can buy your way onto the ballot by gathering signatures, paying people to go out and get signatures for you, or doing it yourself, which is pretty hard with 28,000. So the governor submitted 28,500 about signatures.
28,006.
Well, 28,006 were verified, but I believe he did submit a few more than that.
Yeah, it was about 32,000. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there were about 4,000 that were not verified, and then there were 592 additional ones that were not reviewed.
Okay.
After
so
he got his 28,000
these signatures, and then Davis County verified the signatures. The county clerk in Davis County. Okay, so I think it's really important for people to know, why in the world would Davis County, because the way that our Constitution and our state is set up is separation of powers. Every county has their own elections, and they're accountable, and they have stewardship over the elections, and every county's county clerk has stewardship over them, and they're supposed to verify those signatures. Why did not every county verify Governor Cox's signatures in the individual counties where those signatures were collected?
Right. It's a great question. We're asking the same question today, too. The code is pretty clear. It says it should be verified by the clerk. It doesn't say a clerk, it's the clerk. But the lieutenant governor entered into an interlocal agreement only with Davis County clerk, moving that responsibility just to that clerk's office. And that should not be within her purview to take that away from each of the county clerks. They are the ones who should have been a part of that agreement. But there wasn't even an agreement until after the whole verification process happened. Then they signed the contract. So there's a lot of problems with that there was no contract to make that happen, to take that responsibility away from the local clerks and to centralize that responsibility with Davis County. And to add to that too, we have concerns over the whole process because it's quite a responsibility. They had over 330,000 names to do in just a small period of time. So they had to hire temporary workers to work in the clerk's office who never went through the certification process. And so it was a very sloppy process, and it definitely deserves more eyes on it.
Well, I can't help but ask the question, and we don't have time to answer it right here, and we can't answer it because we don't have proof, but why did the lieutenant governor choose Davis County election clerk, Brian McKenzie? Why would she choose him to do all of those? And why would she choose anyone, frankly, but why specifically him when it is the stewardship of each individual county? So that is something for people to certainly ask questions about and question. And if you...
Yeah, I just want to add, it's a pattern that we're seeing in this administration of centralizing authority into a single office. So we're seeing that with the elections, where even they're going that direction to centralize it even more. But a lot of the power, the governor right now appoints our judges, and he wanted to appoint the attorney general and the school board and the treasurer and the auditor. There's just this massive centralization of power on the top that we're concerned about.
Yeah, he really did attempt. He's trying to get there to be a law that the treasurer and the auditor and the AG are all appointed by
the governor.
Yeah, which like totally un-American, completely 100% un-American.
There's another issue back to the number of signatures that I thought was really interesting, and I'd seen it when it came out in the report, and I'd heard a little bit about other signatures that were gathered, because, you know, and Spencer's campaign said, well, we gathered thousands of additional signatures that weren't even counted. And it's like, why would those not have been reported? And it came out in the report, and he said packets that the Davis County clerk flagged for having many non-matching signatures and were sent to the Attorney General's office. And so I asked the auditor general about that. I said, what are these? What is it that's at the Attorney General's office? And he said, oh yeah, there are thousands of signatures that were clearly like full packets, one after another, that were all filled out by the same person. I said, so that's forging people's signatures. He said, yeah, that's so those, and the Davis County clerk didn't. Yeah, he didn't include that in any of the information. And I think, well, I'm sure that, you know, these other candidates who turned in thousands of extra signatures, like Brown and Curtis and Jason Walton, you know, Jason Walton said he turned in 50,000 signatures to make sure he got his 28,000. Well, I think the governor turned in a lot of extras too. It just turns out that the company that he used, or the company who contracted with the gathering people, so there was some unethical stuff there, and nobody wants to talk about that and say, oh, well, nothing to see there. We'll just talk about this batch of signatures, which left him really thin at the end. I'm sure he thought he had thousands more signatures than he needed, but because they turned him over to the Attorney General's office, which I think means it's an investigation, so those weren't even put into that number. So the fact that all of those were disqualified before they even started disqualifying the others left him with a really razor thin buffer, and now that's going away. So.
Right. Okay. So yeah, there's the same company that Governor Cox hired to gather his signatures, also gathered signatures for Senator Ipsen. And really early, before at the very beginning, before the primary, that was determined that Senator Ipsen's signatures, many of them were fraudulent. He didn't end up needing them. He qualified in convention, so he didn't need them to qualify. But that was determined that a great deal of those were fraudulent, which made me think, okay, well, now we need to be careful of we need to vet all signatures, which we should do anyway. But then we're hypersensitive that we absolutely have to vet all the signatures. So then tell us what happened there, because there were several grammar requests, and just so that everyone understands, I don't know what that background noise is. Can you guys hear it? I don't know what's caused.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sorry. So a grammar request is a government records
access.
Yeah. So it's going to the government saying, this is because of transparency, we should have access to these records. So there were several grammar requests done to look at the signatures so that the citizens, and then of course, Natalie, if you want to kind of lay out the law, I looked it up myself and seen the law regarding who has a right to see the signatures that are gathered.
Yes, we think the law is very clear that we should be able to see the signature packets. And that was how they applied the law up until we asked. There's an individual who went in and said, I want to look at the state school board race. She talked to the lieutenant governor's office. She drove up from St. George area, and they said, yes, you can see the packets. They're at Davis County Clerk's office. And they gave her full access to it. Other people asked in Utah County, Washington County, and they were told that they could look at these packets. So when we heard about this criminal investigation, and we thought, since this is the only barrier that Spencer Cox needed to pass to get on the primary, we wanted to be able to look at these packets ourselves. We asked for information. We asked to be able to see them, and they said, no, you can't see this. You can't look at this. They said there's private names on there that you don't have access to. And then we said, well, private names in code, if someone says they want to be private on the voter rolls, which is not a petition, it's a whole separate document, but there is a category for private names. But in the code itself, it says that candidates should have access to private names. So it doesn't make sense. And then they said, well, these are actually protected. The entire document's protected. but they don't treat the whole document protected because they gave us access to some and not to others. So none of it, it's all nonsensical. There's also a balancing act that they should apply to protected documents. They refuse to apply to see if you should get access to it, if it's in the interest of the public to get it. They refuse to apply that at the Lieutenant Governor's office. We asked them to apply it when we appealed it, and they also refused to apply it there with the Chief Administrative Officer. So it's been a battle. We were doing this before the primary. We were trying to run a race. The burden should not have been on me and Phil to verify these documents. It should be open. They put so many barriers on it for us that we should not have had to take our time and our money. And we're $100,000 close to in legal fees and trying to even be able to view the documents that had we gone that they gave other people access to look at. So we're concerned about that. Yeah, and then we also, you mentioned the Attorney General. We got word that there were signatures that the Attorney General's office was looking at back in early July, and we did a grammar request to say we want to know about this investigation. We had the name and the business card of the investigator. We had the case number, and we asked the Attorney General's office about it, and they came back and said, we don't have any record of any of this happening. That's insufficient information for us to tell you anything. So it's been hurdle after hurdle and barriers put up. It's making it very difficult, but we are not giving up. We're going to keep pushing to get some information out of this.
Well, and to your point, Natalie, you have to say, well, if we're not the ones to go enforce this, who is the one that should be forcing this? And clearly before the primary, it should be the state GOP. They should, I mean, they vetted their candidates through convention. They should stand by that candidate. And that doesn't mean, oh, I put your name forward and then watched you get, destroyed by the incumbent governor. It's like they should have been right out there saying, no, that's not how this works. We're going to stand up for our candidate. They should have filed the lawsuit. If there was a lawsuit, they should have asked for the records, demanded the records, and they would have had a lot of clout. It's hard when you're a candidate demanding the records from the very person you're running against.
Right.
It's just, it's like putting us in a really impossible situation, and they could have really helped.
It's a very good point, Phil, because that really the job of the party is to support the party candidates.
That's why you have a convention.
You won overwhelmingly at convention, so you were the official party candidate because of the law, not because of the party, but because of the law. A law allows another person to go out and buy their way onto the ballot, but the party doesn't. The party bylaws say you have to run caucus convention, and if you win over 60%, you are the official candidate.
And it's interesting. Yeah. And I don't want to take you off track, but that's what our lawsuit is now at the Supreme Court. We run it through the Utah Supreme Court, and it's essentially saying, well, if you qualified through the convention system to be on the general ballot, can my action, I decide I'm going to get signatures, and that forces you into a primary that you clearly cleared the hurdle. You don't have to do that, which gets to the point of, can the GOP make decisions for itself? Do they have the right of association guaranteed in the Constitution? And I think the Supreme Court's going to rule in our favor. I don't know how it plays out, but we're not wrong about these things. We're not throwing out false things. We're throwing out the truth. And it's amazing how much more angry people get when you tell them the truth and when you go along with whatever lie they're trying to promote.
This is why the rule of law in a republic, we have rule of law. We are governed by the rule of law. This is why the rule of law is so important, because it's really easy to get swayed either way by relationships and emotionally. You're like, oh, this would be so devastating. But when you have the rule of law, you're just like, this is the law. This is how we must make the decision. And if we don't like the law, then we go in and change the law or attempt to. But we're supposed to always govern not based on how relationships or how someone feels, the emotion of it. And everyone is supposed to be treated the same and equally. And we know when it comes to signature verification, this is extremely flawed. And we definitely have to make some changes here, because I have seen, like when we did the signatures on the tax referendum, I worked very hard. I gathered thousands and thousands of signatures. and turning those in, we were treated in a very different way. Like they tried to find every excuse to remove a signature and invalidated packets if one was a flaw. The same with the flag initiative. When we did the flag initiative to restore, or to at least put on the ballot to restore Utah's flag, if there was a question on a date or one single signature, they threw out the entire 50 signatures. But then when it comes to Governor Cox's signature path and the signatures he turned in, it's just treated very differently, which is what happens in it happens under tyranny, it happens under dictatorship, it happens under a monarchy, it's not supposed to happen under a republic, under the rule of law. So this is very problematic, and I think that we all need to be concerned. And it doesn't have anything to do with Spencer Cox or Phil Lyman. It has nothing to do with people or personalities. Our Constitution and our state constitution, we're supposed to make these decisions based on the rule of law, based on what the law is. Okay, so I just think that's the signatures are a big deal, because without the signatures, then Governor Cox would not really be officially, legally on the ballot. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's right. And it's interesting because I know we had an audit that came out this week, and it says, looking at these numbers, yes, exactly. And it says based on the numbers that they looked at, he falls short on the signatures. And we said, that's what we've been asking about this whole time. But then the response has been coming back, and they're saying, well, he could have gotten more. And exactly to your point, that's not how it works. Like, there's deadlines for a reason. That we need to have the rule of law. And Deidre Henderson gave a pretty fiery press conference a few days ago about the rule of law. It should be applied, and justice is blind. Justice should be blind. It should be treat everybody the same, regardless of where you are, especially if it's in your own race. You should be more transparent, and you should be more fair there. And I'm with you. All those points you mentioned, they're candidates too. In this last race, there's a school board candidate who was 8 signatures short. She didn't qualify. She didn't pass that barrier. The lieutenant governor's office said, you're done. You can't do it. There's another candidate, Mike Cook, who wanted to just amend his filing, and there was no leniency given there, even though the GOP had voted that he should be able to amend his filing and go the convention route. The lieutenant governor pushed back on the Utah County GOP, said this is not allowed. We will not let him amend it. So we've seen very strict guidance on the deadlines. They've been very, very strict on all of the deadlines. And so
I think you have to be strict on the deadlines. I mean, that's
right.
What a deadline is. It's not a suggestion. It is the rule of law. It is the deadline.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And one more, I think about the vote. There were thousands of votes in southern Utah that their votes were cast. Mm-hmm. They sent it through the mail. And for some reason, our lieutenant governor knew this, but it wasn't very publicized. Our mail service was taking all of those ballots to Las Vegas, and they were not time-stamped until they got to Las Vegas. And so because of that, thousands of these ballots were delayed, and they were past the deadline, and they were not counted. So even though that was an extenuating circumstance, there was no leniency given there. So we expect the same thing.
And that's where legitimate people did, in good faith, did everything they were supposed to. They did it the way the Utah state government told them to. You just have to have it in the mail by this date. And it was completely outside of their control. And I think most of us had no idea that their mail didn't get date stamped in Utah, that it get date stamped in an entirely another state days later and got sat on. And none of those votes are being respected, even though, in my opinion, based on the rule of law, they should all be counted. They should be, because because the voter did their due diligence and did everything.
I agree with that. Right.
I want to talk a little bit about the audit itself, if
Please.
just for a second, because there's a lot of misconception about what this audit is. First of all, the Legislative Audit Committee, or the Legislative Audit Office of the Legislative Auditor General, they're internal auditors. Their job is to improve processes. They say right on their back, we help organizations improve. And the audit was called performance audit of the signature verification process. They're not auditing Spencer Cox's signatures. They're just auditing the process, which means they have to look at those signatures. They find problems, and they say, so for the sake of the legislature, in the future, you could do something that would help avoid this problem in the moving forward. After our little rally at the Capitol yesterday, reporters from the Deseret News, there was the Salt Lake Tribune there, but the Deseret News has become my new least favorite paper because they spin everything so. And they said, you said that you told the people here that Spencer Cox committed fraud. I said, I did not say that. I did not say that. And he said, you said the report said that. I said, I would never say the report said that because that's not their job. And they said, well, the report specifically said there was no fraud. And I said, no, the report doesn't say that. It's from a CPA standpoint, it's like, you think this audit was like an investigation, like a gotcha thing. And it was never that. It was a process audit. The auditors would never say, we found there was fraud. They would never say, we found there was no fraud. They would say, we looked at the process. These are the suggestions that we give to make it better in the future. So, and it was also statistical. So it's also wrong on our side to come out and say, and unequivocally, he failed to get his signatures. Statistically, it looks like he failed to get his signatures, and statistics are pretty good. So at the very least, it should trigger a full audit of the signatures themselves. If you get that information, if you're the legislative audit committee that ordered this audit, you get this report back, it should be like, we have to go look. This number one, it really validates what Phil and Natalie have been saying all along, and number two, we better look into this. Or the other alternative would be that the object of the audit, Spencer Cox, who's the only one that failed in the audit, would step forward and say, I did my best. I thought I was doing it right. It was not a touchdown, and I'm not gonna continue on with this race. That would be the two scenarios that I could see. But to say, oh look, he scored a touchdown, it's like, no, he didn't. He didn't score the touchdown, and that's what the Deseret News wants to say. In fact, they're saying the audit report says that he did qualify for the ballot. It says no. It said he followed the process. He wasn't cheating.
Right.
He just didn't score a touchdown. And it's pretty clear about that. So interesting understanding and how this all fits in. And the auditor generals are some of my favorite people up there on the Capitol. I'm not saying they get everything right, and I'm not saying they're completely unbiased in certain situations, but this one was very informative, and it came out before the election, and they didn't have to do that. They could have sat on this till middle of November, but they let it come out. So I thought that was very telling as well.
Okay, to be clear, I want everyone to understand exactly what the audit did say. What does the audit actually tell us?
It's very clear, based on their audit sample, that they predict that Governor Cox was 572 short. But then they go and they say, but there were 491 ballots in, and we picked up 390 or something. And so based on that, you would project at the very best case scenario, he's at least like 78 votes short. Worst case scenario is like 250 votes short. And that's what their audit says. But they are saying, we don't see that he was cheating. We don't see that he was committing fraud. He just
submitted signatures, and the company hired submitted them, and you kind of put that in their hands.
The process that they went through yielded some faulty results, and when they look at that, he would come up short. John Curtis and Derek Brown didn't come up short. They had more than enough in their slush fund to cover that, but Spencer Cox didn't.
Okay, yeah. So my understanding is they didn't audit all the signatures, but did they? Because my understanding is they just did a sample.
1,000. They selected 1,000, and from a statistics standpoint, about 380 is what you need out of the 28,000. It seems like a small number, but statistically, you could get a 95% certainty with 380. They tripled that roughly up to 1,000, mainly because they wanted to see if there were anything else that popped up. But yeah, so 1,000 was almost three times the amount that you would do if you were doing just a basic audit, which was exactly the same number that John Dougal came up with when he did his audit, and he did I think it was 380 as a sample size. So, and he came up honestly with very similar findings statistically.
Okay. So according to this audit, then it would appear, but it's not completed. That audit won't probably be done until the end of the year. And we have the election in, now and in November. So what would it would appear, but I don't know if we have concrete proof, but it would appear at this point that Governor Cox did not get enough signatures. Do we have enough proof to say he definitely did not, or do we need to finish the audit before we can know for certain?
So they're done with the signature part of the audit. They're not looking at
see.
signatures moving forward. They'll look at
Okay.
voter rolls, which they're
Mhm.
looking at now, and they say there's some significant problems with our voter rolls. No
Yes.
surprise to anybody that's been paying
No.
attention.
No.
But yeah, they're done with the signature part. So what I think the audit committee should do, or the leadership of the House and the Senate, is to say clearly, we either conclude that Spencer didn't get his signatures, or we do a full recount of the 28 of all of his signatures, and honestly just disclose everything that's going on. These signatures that are sitting with the Attorney General's office, to me, that's a huge story that's never been told, and it's only been like kind of leaked out a little bit in this report. And people should be saying, wait a second, what? Packets and packets and packets full of fraudulent signatures that somebody wrote in. And it could be, maybe they're saying, well, this gatherer didn't know that you had to actually have a signature. He thought he could write everybody's name in. I don't know. But yeah, and I think the AG's office is doing something, so I can't speak for them. But all of this is, as we saw with Washington County, it's more of a tactic of saying, well, you can't have any of the information because it's under investigation. And in the meantime, the election goes forward as if everything's fine. And then when the information comes out, next June or something, they'll say, well, it's too late now,
Right. The people have voted. The people have spoken. They voted. It's too late now.
Well, yeah. Fraudulent election, but what are we going to do? Come back in 4 years.
Okay, so Phil and Natalie, what is the recourse? Like, what should happen now? What would you have other, like the AG, or, I mean, I know what the options are for Governor Cox, so I'm not going to hold my breath on that. But so what is the process at this point, and what can we as citizens do at this point?
Do you want to try that one?
Yeah, I'll say, I think we need to just keep asking questions and make a lot of noise and tell the legislatures that they need to do something about it. And whether that means calling a special session or making a statement about it. But also, we think the ballot should be reprinted. We think that we're the ones that are the one that should be on the ballot. We have, they can continue to use the ballots that they have to do the presidential race and all the other races that are important right now, but we could have the ballots reprinted for our election to be held after this, as soon as this could be sorted out. We have concerns even with some of the balloting right now. I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday, Phil and I were at an event, and somebody said, I brought my ballot because I wanted to fill it out in front of you. He fills it out, puts it in the envelope, and there's a little hole on the back of the envelope right over where he wrote in our names on the back. So it's visible from the outside of the envelope. Somebody could look at it and clearly see that this ballot is being voted for the writing candidates. So that's a major concern right there. And so I know it's expensive to reprint ballots, but it's more important that we have a legitimate candidate on the ballot. We need to fix that.
So interesting thing. I don't know if I sent that video out to the group, Natalie, but so another guy sent his ballot in from Wasatch County, and he says, look at this. So the hole is in a whole different place on his ballot, but so is the writing candidacy is in a whole different place, and it's right on top of the writing candidacy. So he pulls up his and he says, yeah, so Wasatch County.
What county is that, Phil?
Wasatch
and Utah County.
Utah counties, they've got a hole right down at the bottom, which happens to be where their writing candidates is. And then when I saw the Wasatch, it's up and to the left, and yet that's where their writing can't. It's like wherever the writing can't, put a hole there, and then we've got reports from the primary of thousands of ballots being destroyed at the post office, and the person says, you can't use my name, you can't really. I don't think we know their name, but they want to stay completely anonymous because they don't want anyone to know. And we don't know if that's true. It could be totally setting us up, but if you wanted to get rid of all of the ballots that had a write-in candidacy, how convenient if you could just look at it and say, yep, sort them out,
You don't
destroy
even
those
have to
ballots.
open them up. You just, no one, it's easy to go through them. No one would really have to open them, and you wouldn't have to have a group of people. No one
So
would be able
we've
to
got
see them or
Salt Lake
vet them.
County, Salt Lake County absolutely shows that. Utah County absolutely shows that, and Wasatch County. And all three of the holes are in a slightly different spot on their envelope, but all three of the write-in sections are in a slightly different spot on their ballots because they print them by county.
Okay, this is huge. I have not heard this, Phil. This is really huge. So you're saying Wasatch County, Utah County, what other county?
Salt Lake
County. And I live in Davis County. And of course, I didn't open my ballot because I'm not planning to open it. I want to wait and make sure nobody votes in my name. And I always vote on voting day because I believe in voting day and I like voting in person. So I guess I might be forced to open my ballot, but I've noticed the little QR code, which is in itself a little alarming. Of course, if you want to track your ballot, you're going to need a QR code to track your ballot. But also, if there's a QR code, could that not? I know I put my tinfoil hat on. If there's a QR code and they can track your ballot, could they not track how you voted? So would that not make my private secret ballot no longer a secret ballot? I'm not a tech guru, but I'm not dumb either. I know if you can program a QR code to track your ballot, it would be very easy. You do not have to be any smarter than a complete moron to know that if they can track your ballot, and then they can track who you voted for. It's super easy.
Yeah, I know they track
also a concern.
I know they track the envelope, and so they can say that your ballot was received,
right.
And put that on their website.
Yeah. But the QR code isn't on the envelope.
It's on the ballot
the QR
itself.
code is
on
the ballot. That's why there's the window on the envelope, so you can see the actual ballot.
I think things like that. That's why the lieutenant governor is saying, doubt anyone who doubts our elections. Trust us. And I mean, absent that kind of pressure to believe us, trust us, I would be more inclined to trust them. But when they start advertising and putting up billboards of how we're so trustworthy, it's like something's up. And I've had the same questions with the ballot itself. Is it really a private ballot? I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah, well, we don't know, but it is something we need to address and we need to fix. The fact that our lieutenant governor is over elections, is her own election and the governor's election, and has stewardship over that and it isn't anything about Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. It's not even personal. Never should a lieutenant governor or anyone be over their own race. And I do think we have an amazing, excellent resolution to that. And there is already a bill virtually written on that to have a Secretary of State that would be over elections. They would have a 6-year term and they can only run once they can run once. They can't run consecutively. So that way they are never over their own election because they can't run again when they would be on the ballot. So I think that is an excellent resolution to that. They could run again in 6 years later and run again, but they wouldn't be on their own ballot. So that's the way we definitely have to eliminate mail-in. You can get your ballot delivered to you. Fine. It's nice to have your ballot in advance so you can vet it, but we shouldn't be putting our ballots into the Postal Service's hands and expecting them to have stewardship over our ballots. That's not a good idea because they have their own job and it is not taking care of our ballots. There's no oversight there. There's no chain of custody, completely severed. And so there's a lot of issues, but what's so great about these kinds of things is it does awaken people to their awful situation. And it does produce ideas of how to overcome these problems. And so there are some bills, not a person who really likes to have a lot of bills, but I do like that we have some ideas to create some resolution. And so Natalie and Phil, what you're saying is that people need to get engaged. We need to contact our legislators. Now, my question is, do our legislators have power? Obviously, they have a lot of power. But they don't really have the power. They're lawmakers. They don't really have the power to remove a candidate from the executive branch. Has to do that. Am I right? I'm just thinking that would be the AG would have to remove a fraudulent, an invalid candidate, not fraudulent, an invalid candidate from the ballot.
Legislators,
Because it's a legislature have the power to do that.
legislators make laws. They also clarify the laws that they've made and the intent of the laws that they've made. And they could absolutely, I don't know that they could come in and say, oh, we are decreeing that the candidate is disqualified, but they could come in and say,
right,
as a legislature, we're not going to put up with this interpretation that prevents the public from the access that they need for the public's interest. They could say, we're going to send out instructions to our county commissioners that until these conditions are met, you can't certify the election. So there's a lot of things that they could do in their realm. And it really bothers me when I get, legislators with especially, top legislators saying, well, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. It's like, well, you certainly involve yourself in all kinds of other things and do things. This is like an important issue. And excuse me, if the legislature stays silent on this one, it's allowing a perversion of their own laws to just go unresponded to.
I think
that's such a good point, Phil, because it's a perversion of their laws. And are they going to allow their laws to be perverted and not respect the rule of law? Excuse me.
Yeah. I was thinking of the recently when Natalie Klein, as a state school board member, when she posted something online that they didn't like, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the entire Senate, the entire House, with the exception of Phil Lyman, all got, was it a special session, Phil? They all got together. I can't
remember if it's a special session or.
Okay. But they voted to condemn her for her actions, for her tweet. And so they definitely made a statement there, and it was loud and clear. It affected her race. She ran again, and she lost after they were so bold against her. So there's things that they can definitely make a statement and let the public know that we have
yes, they can make a statement, because they don't have any purview over the state school board. So that they were outside of their lane, and it was during the 2024 legislative session. So it wasn't a special session. Right. It was during the session.
And then
they were already meeting, they're already there.
Yeah.
And
they also have the power.
They felt really
important.
They felt it was really important to do that.
Yeah, it was crazy. But they also have the power of impeachment. So if things don't, there's a lot of power. Every branch is supposed to have a check on the other branch, and that's what one of their branches, when their checks is on the executive branch.
Okay, so wrapping up, what would be a list of talking points that we can give people so they can share with their friends and neighbors to help them understand what is really going on? Let's give people a list. I'd like people to know exactly what they can do and how they can do it so they can be most effective. Contact your legislators.
I think, excuse me, I think the key thing is that it appears that Spencer Cox did not get his signatures. He's not qualified. Greg Hughes said it on the radio a couple of days ago. He's unqualified. He's disqualified. He's disqualified. Period. Didn't get his signatures. And you can make it as a statement that then, say, if I'm wrong, disprove me with a full audit, something. But I think that's one thing that really resonates with. They can understand that, is that he didn't get his signatures. And what I say, if a candidate is going to bypass the whole Republican form of government, locally elected representatives to go to convention, if he's going to bypass that whole system with by gathering signatures and winning a primary election, then we have to have transparency on the signatures and the primary election. If you don't have transparency on that, then all you've got now is you can install a governor. And we're not talking about, somebody said, we're not talking about a survey of, who has the best pizza in Salt Lake. This is kind of an important office, and those policies that they make and have been making roll forward and affect people's lives. And I don't know if this falls under the talking point thing, but I call it the syndicate. And there's a group of people who have a huge investment in the policies, especially on the Wasatch Front, huge investment. And I believe that they are deliberately trying to ensure that nobody can mess with that. And that's what SB 54 was about, all of these things.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity of a lifetime, honestly, to actually correct something that we talk about a lot.
Mhm.
And now we have the opportunity to do it. And are we going to pull our punches? Are we going to step back and let this move forward? And that's where you asked for talking points, and I'm rambling on here, but that's where as a legislature saying we'll fix this moving forward, and in 4 years, boy, you count on us. We're going to stick to the rule of law. It's like those are empty words if they don't do something right now. And you have more talking points, Natalie, I'm sure. I'm sorry.
It's great. No, but I mean, it really is the perfect storm right now. If you look at what happened, we asked for the information timely before the primary. We pushed for that. We were denied that information. There was an ongoing criminal investigation going on with the same company. It should have made it more of important. We should have had more access because of that. Phil is a representative. He should have been given more access because he's a representative. And there's a number of reasons why this is the time that we need to make changes. And just like Phil said, everyone keeps saying, well, okay, we'll fix this later, but it has to be changed now, because this is when it matters. People are watching. They need to know that they can trust what's happening. And if we don't change it, if we have 4 more years of Spencer Cox and people know that he was an illegitimate candidate, that's really going to harm our state and everything going forward. It needs to change now.
Yeah, you can't do it later. It's not an issue later. People kind of get on with their lives and things happen and you can't remember the details. I can't help but liken this unto the time of the founding fathers of America. They're going through similar things. The tyranny, there was, the rule of law. They actually lived under a degree. They had so much freedom. They were able to govern themselves, and then they just kept losing more and more freedoms. And they got to a point where they said, we have to stand up now. We've been trying for 11 years to work things out. We have to stand up now. And I just feel like that's where we are. When will we stand up? If not now, when will we? When will we decide that things are not right and we need to do something about it? So I ask everyone to spend 5 minutes a day. Take 5 minutes of your day. Just set an alarm. 5 minutes of your precious day that you have all kinds of things to do. That might dip into your exercise or eating or watching television or playing games. Take 5 minutes. Call your legislature. Go on, legislators. Go on to le.utah.gov, le.utah.gov. Put your address in. It will help you. If you do not know your legislators' names or phone numbers, you go on there. It will tell you who your House member is. It will tell you who your senator is. You need to contact both of them, and you need to say, I am very concerned about our republic. It is at risk. We cannot allow, it doesn't have anything to do about how I feel about Spencer Cox or how I feel about Phil Lyman. It is irrelevant. Please come back to the rule of law. Please, you make the laws. We need to be sure that the laws and the intent of the laws are followed. Please do something. You're very happy to make statements. You're very happy to act. Please do something. This is very important to the salvation of our state. Also, call the AG's office. The AG's office phone number is 801-366-0260. Call the AG's office. You won't need to talk. You won't be able to talk to Attorney General Sean Reyes, and you won't need to. You simply call and say, I'm very concerned. I know that you have a lot of signatures that are under investigation that we are absolutely confident are fraudulent. We know that, signatures across the state, not just Senator Ipsen's, but Governor Cox's. And we're very concerned about what's happening here. We want to know what's happening on this investigation. We need you to come out. We need you to speak. We need you to talk to the citizens. the AG's office will respond when people care and they know that people know what's going on and people care. Then the AG's office can respond to us as citizens. We need to have some action. We need some response. We need to get things going. So then I ask you to, once you do that, I want everyone, please call 3 to 5 friends. Help them understand what is going on. Help them know what is happening in our state. And one thing that's really important is that we need to help people. If you just overwhelm people, you just give them too much information, they get overwhelmed and they're just like, oh, I don't understand. It's too much. And then they do nothing. The way the Savior taught was line upon line, precept on precept. Call 3 friends, or if you're really totally on my A list, call 5 friends, or have a little get together, invite them over and have a little meeting, a little cottage meeting, and explain in basic details what's happening here and ask them to call their senator, call their House member, and call the AG's office. This would literally take 5 minutes to make those phone calls. And if enough people do that, it will make all the difference in the world. It will help to educate people. And you know, what's true also is that nothing great ever happened by the masses. Find me one thing in the entire world, all through history, as a history teacher, I have looked, something in history that happened because the masses did it. Never. Great things happen because a small group of people took action and did something. They got educated and then they did something about it. We do not need the masses. We need a group of educated, involved, passionate, caring people who say, I want to do the right thing. I want to make a difference. And my little actions can make a difference. I do not have to go out and sacrifice my entire life. I do not have to die. I can do something. And it's those small actions that add up that make all the difference. So that's what I would encourage every single person to do. Please do something. Please act. And please reach out to each other. All right. Do you have any last minute thoughts?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for putting out the message, and it's always, when it's coming from you, it's always very clear, and that's rare in our media today to have just a clear, honest message. So thank you for that.
Okay. So if somebody should decide, I would like to vote for the candidate who actually qualifies to be on the ballot, how do they do that? Because what people may or may not know, and a lot of people do not know, is that you can write in a candidate. There is a place, but you have to write their name. And because Governor Spencer Cox went out and he actually paid Richard Lyman $1,000 and paid the filing fee and asked him to file and to be on the ballot, so that if you just write Lyman, if you write in Lyman, your vote will not count because they won't know which Lyman. He also got Richard Lyman's mother to be a write-in candidate. So this is, this is where we are. This is where we are. The governor openly, we have evidence from Richard Lyman, said the governor's campaign went to him and asked him, paid him $1,000 and the filing fee. Oh, and a steak dinner, as well.
Just to make sure and clarify that. So that came from a coworker that said that's what Richard told him.
Oh, thank you.
And so there's alleged things there that we and that's what we've asserted from the beginning is, we received this information and I believe it's credible, but and I doubt that Spencer Cox himself was very close to any of that. Probably didn't even have an idea. I've seen his campaign work. So
his campaign.
Yeah, so
it's his campaign.
So yeah, but it's a really you really have to stretch to think that this obscure Richard Lyman decided he was going to run for governor, even though he's never run an ad, never done anything. So just to clarify.
Yes. Thank you so much. Because so it was his coworker that kind of is a whistleblower.
Yeah, we had the text string between Richard and his coworker. Which
yes, we have proof of evidence of that. That's why it's credible, and that's why we believe it. And and I do think it's really important. Of course, Spencer Cox is not running his campaign. He's a governor. He's not running it. So it is his campaign. Although I don't think the campaign does too many things like this without getting approval, but you never know. They could have just decided to do this on their own, which, campaigns do that. So they could have.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if you want to vote for Phil Lyman, you'll need to write in Phil, Phil, Lyman, Lyman. You do not have to write Natalie's name on, but I guess you can if you want to. But you will need to write in Phil Lyman's name and be sure and write Phil and be sure and write Lyman. And you write that in and it will be counted. And this, again, is an opportunity for you, for your voice to be heard and to be counted.
And fill in the little bubble and then flip it upside down so you can't see it through the little holes if you can figure out a way to fold it a different way.
Yeah, if you're going to mail it in or drop it in a Dropbox, which I really would ask everyone not to do that. Take it up to the county. Take it up to the county there and then fold it in a way that it can't be seen from the outside, which in itself may cause question and alarm too. So just if they can't see, they might be suspicious, but less chance of it being thrown in the garbage. So yes, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Natalie. And I appreciate you guys taking time to be on. I know you have so much to do. And there are many events that are across the state. And I'll just put a plug in for Monday night in Layton. There's an event. If you are interested in going to that, where Phil and Natalie will be speaking, you can come and meet them, come and ask them the questions. They will give you full access. You can hear them speak, and then you can actually talk to them and ask them questions. And how many events have you guys had since you were running?
Oh,
do you have any idea?
We have a lot. I mean, we're booked solid the next 2 weeks, every single night with evening events and podcasts.
But you have
in the
been
day.
all through the campaign.
Yeah, we had
You always have
3 or 4 or 5 things yesterday.
Yeah.
So yeah, we stack them up where we can. We're going to the BYU game tonight. Kind of a tailgate presence there that I'm not sure how that's all going to play out, but we're going to be at the BYU game tonight.
And Logan tomorrow. And look at our social media because we're putting it all up there so that you can see both. We're on Instagram.
Okay, great.
I'm Natalie for Utah on Instagram, and Phil is Lyman for Utah. And then we're on X too and Facebook, so you can find us there.
Yes. Well, find them and go to one of their events, because how many events, meet and greets did Governor Cox hold when he was running for the caucus before convention? I personally invited him to numerous ones that I held, that I put on meet and greets, to several of them that I personally, and I did want him to come so people could meet him, talk to him, ask him the questions, make the comparisons. He didn't attend any, and to my knowledge, that he did not hold not even one single one. And it was never the opportunity to go and meet with Spencer Cox and talk to him and ask him questions and find out who he was. So I think that please make that as a consideration as you make your most valuable decision. That voting is the most important of our rights, because all of our other rights hinge on that ability to vote and be able to choose and elect our own representatives, not our own people that rule over us, but our own representatives. So please take this seriously and be very prayerful and thoughtful before you cast that vote. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. Thank you for running. Thank you for all the education that you've done and the hard work that you've done and the arrows that you've taken. Thank you. And I hope that everyone will have a beautiful day and remember that you truly are the guardian of your own liberty. Thank you.